there is a regain of appetite of the pharma and biotech industry for deals.
You can accomplish a deal very quickly in the span of a matter of weeks.
Regardless of the size of the upfront, you still have more than 90% of the deal to come. And to sacrifice that because you got a couple of million more in upfront would be very short-sighted.
So you want to sign a deal and you want to have the right number of zeros at the bottom of the deal, but at the same time, no one wants to dance with the devil.
To some extent, market cap was an anchor that was dragging us down.
Obviously, biotech first and foremost saw an opportunity for very high quality science. When they saw where the market value was, they saw an opportunity to invest in Ryvu.
On one hand, Ono, like many Japanese companies, is very slow to take decisions. But on the other hand, once they take a decision, they're very solid.
Galapagos as a company that was in 2020 when we signed the deal was completely different to the Galapagos from 2022 that returned the asset.
You have to do partnering to validate your technology and allow investors to understand that the company is progressing. But at the same time, you need to try and reserve some assets, but you add significant value and then you get into the billions.
In Poland, they say, when is the next deal? In the US, is how far can you go with your project pipeline? If I give you that money.
We're at the stage of growth of the whole environment at which the capital, the investors, do not yet have the taste for the very late stages.
You can expect potential milestones as well as various announcements from our partners.
In my experience, this is kind of a pre-sale actually event.
I think that within the next 2 to 3 years, we should be able to reach this second billion.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to host this discussion panel with an international group of managers responsible for life science projects commercialization on the global arena. I would like to welcome Nicholas Buzen, the Director of Business Development and Licensing from Molecure, Piotr Garstecki, Chief Executive Officer of Scope Fluidics, Tom Shepard, Chief Executive Officer from Captor Therapeutics, and remotely from Colorado, 4 a.m., as I remember, Vat-Ho from Ryvu Therapeutics, Chief Business Officer of Ryvu. Okay, so we have already reached around 1 billion zlotys in total from commercialization of Polish life science innovations. And I would like to put a thesis that we waited for it for over 10 years or 15 years or something like that. I would like to put a thesis that for another billion we will probably wait much shorter. So that's the main topic of this panel. And starting from deal values, I would like to start with Tom Shepard, and if it's, in your opinion, if it's the Polish science value rising or deal-making know-how developed year by year, that average biotech deal value is rising year by year because these numbers are bigger with every deal.
Sure. No, I think it's, for me, it's quite a logical progression in that biotech in Poland is still relatively new compared to the rest of the world. As you say, maybe 10 years or so of real intensive drug discovery. And in the biotech, in terms of medical biotech for therapeutics, the timeline for creating new projects is quite long. So I think it's entirely logical that as the projects of the different companies, Molecure, Ryvu, Captor, as those projects move down towards clinical trials and further in development, those projects, generally speaking, provided the data is positive, of course, but generally speaking, they increase in value. So I think the reality is that the value of the projects in Polish biotech will logically increase as they progress. And it's certainly something I've observed in my years at Captor, whereas 3 years ago, we had very early stage projects. So when we were discussing with pharma, it was really on the basis of a few lead compounds and not so much significant in vivo data, etc. But now when we talk with pharma, we have projects which are much more advanced, which are almost at the clinic. And therefore, I think it's entirely logical that deal values will indeed increase. I wouldn't like to put a number on when the 2 billion will happen in terms of numbers of years, but I think it will be significantly less than the first billion, maybe even only a couple of years. So I think it's what most people expect. Of course, all projects won't make it. Some of the value will go down if the data is bad, but in general, I think the trend will continue.
Nicholas, do you think that this trend will continue?
Well, I do, and I don't have much to add to to what Thomas said already. 2007 was really the beginning of the biotech industry in Poland with Cellvita, and Cellvita paved the way for everyone else. Maybe there are some people who remember the first bio that was attended by a Polish company, Bio in Atlanta in 2009. And the recognition of Poland as a country doing science was questioned at that time. I mean, do you really have scientific results, or are you inventing them? And therefore, there was a lot of education to be made to prove that the Polish science and the Polish biotech was worthy of being recognized. Then came the first deal. They were commercial deals. Then there was the first collaboration deal with Orion for Cellvita, and that put Poland as a biotech country on the radar of bigger pharma companies. As Tom said, the increased maturity of the program in each individual pipelines means that the value increases because the risk associated with these programs is changed. Therefore, companies are willing to spend much more. And one thing that I would add as well is that post-COVID, there is a regain of appetite of the pharma and biotech industry for deals. Reason being is that there's the pipeline drought, there's patent cliffs. All these bigger pharma companies have moved away from R&D and into pure development, clinical development, even late phase clinical development, and sometimes just even commercial development. So they need people like us to basically do the research and the early phases, and that has a cost. So again, I don't want to put a date, but I think that within the next 2 to 3 years, we should be able to reach this second billion.
Piotr Grostecki, I would like to ask you if, in your opinion, if your experience shows that the company valuation on the public market influences the deal value. I mean, if higher valuation would mean potentially higher deal values. What's your experience in that field?
So a short answer is obviously yes, and we've seen this in our negotiations towards the sale of PCR1 technology. Obviously, market cap is an anchor that the deciding bodies on the other side, on the sales side, are looking at. But at the same time, multiple other factors actually play a role. For medtech or diagnostic market, these are and there are many aspects. Probably this is quite different from pharma of the business, because in medtech you're really buying not a molecule, not an invention, not a lead, but rather you're buying a business, and with all of the aspects and angles that you look at. So the quality of the team, of the technology, moderating multiple risks. I could talk for an hour about this, and competitiveness of the process also influence the outcome. So I mean, we're happy to have reached deal value that significantly higher than the market cap, but yes, to some extent, market cap was an anchor that was dragging us down.
Okay, and Vatnak, when it comes to biotech deal signed at the end of last year, In terms of the contract, BioNTech obliged himself to buy Ryvu shares around 20% over the market level at the time. What decided? How did you, let's say, convince BioNTech to sign this kind of agreement?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Piotr. And yeah, obviously, as you pointed out, market valuation was a key factor in our deal because there was an equity component. But I guess since the topic of this panel was about kind of market value overall, so obviously the component of equity in the BioNTech deal was critical for them. As everyone knows, biotech valuations in the past year were depressed for several reasons. Our stock was affected by the biotech turndown in general, as well as the macroeconomic factors such as the situation in the Ukraine. And so, BioNTech saw in Ryvu and Cellvita, and first of all, I guess I should thank Nicholas for the kind words on behalf of Cellvita as well as Ryvu on recognizing the history of biotech and what's happened in Poland. But obviously, BioNTech first and foremost saw an opportunity for very high quality science in what was happening at Ryvu, and so that was the basis for the deal. And then the market valuation, when they saw where the market value was, they saw an opportunity to invest in Ryvu, and so we were very happy to include that as part of our deal negotiations and our deal package. And so certainly in this case, the market valuation came into play. But as everyone on this panel has said, I think the intrinsic value of science in Poland and the intrinsic value of what we've done at Ryvu was a key factor in the deal in the first place, and then market valuation was kind of another factor in the deal package.
Piotr, if I could just add a sentence, I think that Polish market is rational in the sense that, and coming back to the first question, we're at the stage of growth of the whole environment at which the capital, the investors, do not yet have the taste for the very late stages of development, either if in pharma or in medtech. So in a sense, that horizon is finite still in Poland. I think it's going to grow. And in that sense, that valuation to some extent is rational. We have to go outside to find people that actually, evaluate the prospect of the business that we want to sell.
Okay. Thank you. Getting into the second topic, deal signing itself. There weren't many discussions here in Poland. How does this process looks like? What it demands from the companies? How long does it take? What are the key milestones in this kind of processes? And I would like to ask the question about that to Vatnak, who, as he has a broad industry experience working, among others, for Pfizer at the pipeline strategy. Vatnak, can you shortly describe this deal signing process? How does it looks like?
Yeah, thanks, Piotr. And as you pointed out, so I've had experience on Pfizer on the buy side, as well as obviously now at Ryvu on the sell side. And the process, as you can imagine, is extremely variable, depending on the situation. And I'll answer this question kind of in two parts, because I think, as everyone is probably aware, you can kind of divide the process into two major parts. So one is the search and evaluation phase, where you are looking for deals and sourcing deals. And then there is the deal phase, where you've already decided to do the deal and now you're trying to negotiate and close the deal. So in the search and evaluation phase, that can take anywhere from a couple months for a new technology to many, many years. So I saw processes at Pfizer where we were monitoring companies for many, many, many years before, kind of strategy and situation kind of aligned for a deal process. Now, once you've decided to do a deal, that can move extremely quickly. And in my mind, there's no reason why it shouldn't move quickly if both sides have decided that a deal should happen. So, I've seen at Pfizer and also at Ryvu, where once we've decided to do a deal, and once both the partner and the licensee have decided to really move forward with the deal, you can accomplish a deal very quickly in the span of a matter of weeks, really. And so, but I've also seen deal processes that can drag out, where maybe other external factors are involved or internal budget decisions are involved. And so it's truly variable, but I think the key is if you and a partner have decided that a deal is appropriate, in my mind, there's no reason to do it as quickly as possible, especially in an environment like ours where you want to be advancing the science or advancing clinical studies as quickly as possible.
Piotr, you already mentioned the differences between biotech and the medtech market. Can you tell something more about the medtech characteristics? How does it look like?
Yes, so I can speak about the medtech characteristics. For the differences, I don't know, we would have to probably discuss. Yeah, so as I said, in medtech, at least my understanding is that the acquirer purchases business, and this is the optimum actually mode. So the ideal transaction for a big global company is to buy a new technology that has already entered the market and has rapidly growing sales, to buy it in after, I don't know, a year or two, probably 2 years on the market. Because in medtech, the business has many aspects, and in every segment of diagnostics, it will be more price sensitive or user friendliness sensitive or performance sensitive. You have the manufacturing, storage, servicing, post-sale processes that all introduce risks that are best verified when you're already on the market. So this is the ideal scenario for the buy side, but they are also we've heard this in our process that they kissed a lot of frogs in the sense that they're searching for best deals, but there are not so many opportunities for them that fit their product portfolio, their strategies, and especially in hot segments. They are forced to make these buy decisions earlier, to buy technology. This is what happened with PCR1. This is what we're hoping for also with Bacteromics. So,
thank you. The third topic is partner selection. I would like to find out if the key goal for your companies is to sign a partnering itself, just to sign it, or to find an optimal partner. And what do you focus on during the negotiations? What is deciding? What is important when you select a partner? What do you focus on? So I would like to start with Nicolas.
Well, you see, you have to strike the right balance, because obviously you want to sign a deal and you want to have the right number of zeros at the bottom of the deal. But at the same time, no one wants to dance with the devil. And we've all heard of companies that, or potential partners that pay well, but are impossible to work with. And when you are on the sell side and when you are of smaller size than your potential partners, you certainly do want to have a collaboration. You want to have a partnership that is good and fair, and not just be on the receiving end of the check and then your project disappears and you never hear of it again, because it's a baby that you have been carrying for sometimes many years, and you want to see it go to fruition. I myself have been faced with the very lucky choice of having several term sheets for projects, and the choice of the partner is not necessarily based purely on the financials. And the partner with whom you would have had the best negotiation, that you see that everything is transparent, that you are speaking the same language, that you are going to work well together, is usually the one that you will favor. even if the financials are maybe not as attractive. But at the end of the day, you know, you're probably married for a number of years. The developments from phase 1 to the market is 6, 7, 8 years. And so you want to make sure that everything is going to go smoothly with your partner during this period of time. I know why the question was asked, and it was probably about, you know, this adventure that we had with Galapagos. I want to first to say that the team that there was, and the Galapagos as a company that was in 2020 when we signed the deal, is or was completely different to the Galapagos from 2022 that returned the asset. All the executive board was different. The strategy was completely different. So that was not the same company that we signed the agreement with. To the point that today we're not even familiar with the people at Galapagos. We don't know anyone. So it's a completely different company. Has this had an impact on our strategy in terms of development of the compound? Not really. It's good that we have it back so that we can partner it again, and we will look differently at potential partners when the time comes.
Brilliant. Tom, what are you looking for?
I think first of all, just to characterize, there are two different kinds of deals where the answer is very different. And one is if it's an acquisition. In other words, someone actually fully acquires an asset or even the company for a sum of money. And there, I think money counts, to be honest, because you're exiting that project. However, for the vast majority of the Polish biotech, we're talking about licensing or joint development deals. And I think there, for me, the first question is the partner motivated on this asset? That's the first question. And then can we get, is that partner got the resources and the expertise to take this forward? Because regardless of the size of the upfront, whether the upfront is 1 million, 10 million, 20 million, or maybe even 30 million for a clinical stage asset, you still have more than 90% of the deal to come in future milestones. And so, you know, if you get 20 million up front, you've probably got a $400 million deal in total. So the only thing you can be sure of is the upfront. But then if the partner doesn't deliver, you lose $380 million. So I think the motivation of the partner and the solidity of the partner is really very critical. So I mean, I agree basically with what Nicola was saying, is that the alignment of the two companies, in other words, both companies want this project to succeed. It has to be important for the partner. It can't be just a small project that they can do nothing with. But at the same time, the money is clearly important. And I think it's always a question of that balance. And sometimes you put up with some difficulties because you can see a really strong advantage. And that's one of the things we did with Ono when we did our deal with Ono. On the one hand, Ono, like many Japanese companies, is very slow to take decisions. Let's be honest, it's just a reality. But on the other hand, once they take a decision, they're very solid in how they progress. So we weighed those two things and we decided that we were going to be patient with Ono. You know, they didn't do the deal in 6 months, you know, but we were very patient with them. But on the other hand, they've been a very solid partner since, and our project is very important to them. So that's just an example that I think you have to really get this alignment of objectives and solidity. You don't want a small company who's changing the strategy every 6 months, who's going to drop your product in a year's time. Because as I say, in the vast majority of deals, you have at least 80% or 90% of the remuneration to come in the future. And to sacrifice that because you got a couple of million more on upfront would be very short-sighted.
Vatnak, as you have an experience on both sides of the market, let's say, I would like to ask you, what do you understand as a win-win between biotech and pharma signing a deal?
Yeah, thank you. And I have to echo what both Nicola and Tom just said, and especially what Tom just mentioned about the difference between, an acquisition versus a licensee. And for us, I think the other dimension is that for Ryvo, the past 2 deals that we signed last year were not just licensees, but also research partners. So even more important for us to find a true win-win situation where the partner as well as us are dedicated to the project and equally motivated to work together. And so, being in a research collaboration with both Exelixis and BioNTech, there was a great mutual scientific respect from the very beginning, from an intellectual perspective that was also kind of reflected in a cultural or personal fit amongst the teams. And that's what enabled the deals to happen. But what we're very happy to have seen is that cultural fit and intellectual commitment and scientific commitment has continued onto the alliance side as well. And so, as Tom pointed out, with these deals as well as the deals that others have signed here, a lot of the downstream milestones are relatively important. And so, the commitment of both sides and being able to work together is extremely important for the deal value overall to come to fruition in future years.
Okay, let's get to another topic, income sources. When I talk to investors, it's not hard to notice that they mostly value upfront payments. This is something that they're waiting for. Another deal, another current report, reporting, another partnering. But it's not the only income source for every biotech or medtech company. There are also, of course, scientific progress, which is much more difficult to evaluate, but also milestones and the different events that should influence the market valuation of every company. And I would like to find out what, in your opinion, has to happen to convince investors that different events are also important value drivers for your companies. And as in Captor's current report connected to the pharmaceutical partnering, as you haven't brought any parameters of the deal, I would like to start with Tom. What's your opinion? What's your view on this topic?
Sure, yes, and I think it's this question in terms of the focus on upfronts is obviously very logical for investors who are moving into, particularly investors who are generalist investors, but moving into biotech. They like to see financial return, and this is entirely understandable. And it's also understandable why the higher the upfront, the better it is in terms of cash flow for the company. However, there are a few complications regarding to upfront that I think it's, which are very clear once you get to the more mature markets. And first of all, just to contrast two different ways of doing deals, is upfronts obviously are the cash payments before anything happens, therefore they're certain. So that's a very good thing why investors like upfronts, because they're certain, whereas milestones are uncertain. But in general terms, in a number of the contracts, for example, I've just heard of two different kinds of deals where the value of the upfront is not necessarily what it seems. And for example, there are situations where an upfront is made, and then obviously in most collaborations, even licenses, there are certain obligations that the licensing party, the biotech company, in our case Captor, has to do. So we have to do research. Now there are two ways of, and American companies are very clever at this, there are two ways of arranging this. One is you agree that a company gives you an upfront of, say, 10 million. And then you have certain obligations to do some research. And essentially, it's your resources that are used in that collaboration to pay for that research that you have to deliver to the party. Effectively, that comes out of the 10 million. In other words, if you have to put 10 people on this for 2 years, it can make your deal look good if you say, okay, 10 million up front, but actually I'm going to have to spend 5 million of that in doing this project. And there are other ways of doing it, which is more compartmentalized, where you say, okay, we get a 5 million up front, but we have 5 million in our guaranteed R&D costs, and all our costs are covered by the other party. So there are many ways to structure deals which can be misleading, etc. Now, that's not a reason for not disclosing it up front. To be honest, the only real reason, which was the case with Captor, of why we didn't disclose the upfront, was that Ono in particular has a long history, and if you look at their deals, you'll see this. They have a long history of insisting that this is confidential commercial information, because they do not want a Captor deal to influence another negotiation by someone saying, well, you gave Captor this much, we want this much. So I think it's just unfortunate that that can happen. But in the end of the day, even if upfronts are disclosed, it's not always what it seems. And in fact, and I had a drink in the bar with a good friend of mine, John Houston, who's the CEO of Arvinas in the US, who made history by having an $850 million upfront with Pfizer. But the reality is he's on the hook for 50% of the development costs of that project. So it's which comes out from that.
The net value was much lower.
So in fact, in the end of the day, it's still it's a fantastic deal, and he did a fantastic job. So I just think that it's very tempting for journalist investors to try and get a headline figure, but unfortunately, in biotech deals, even if someone says they had an upfront of 10 million, the total milestones are 400 million, you still don't really know what that means in the end of the day. And even in US companies, those deals are often highly redacted because of the commercial confidentiality. So unfortunately, it's a problem that investors face. But I think one final thing I would just say is that also we need to look at the portfolio aspect of this point, in that companies should be able to do deals, but at the same time, they should also make sure they can develop some high value assets, because at the end of the day, investors are in these companies for the value when they exit, when the investor exits. And that value is largely determined not by the deals you do, but it's determined by how far your projects advance to generate the capital value in the company. We can come back to that a bit later, but I think you have to have that two aspects. Upfronts are certainly not everything. They're important, and we should always try and get the maximum upfront we can because it's guaranteed money. But on the other hand, be careful in evaluating deals. For example, the C4 Therapeutics deals, which was announced a few weeks ago in China, which looked great on paper. They got 20 million upfront for a deal, etc. But they actually, even though it's their product, they have a long-term obligation to pay a royalty back to the Chinese company. And so that's not such a great deal. You got 20 million upfront, but you then owe them a royalty on your product. So I think we just have to be very careful about analyzing deals. And there's no magic solution, unfortunately. It's difficult for investors. I appreciate that.
Nicholas, what do you think has to happen to extend the list of important value drivers in the eyes of investors?
Well, I totally concur with what Tom was saying. There's a shroud of secrecy on every deal, and there's not one size fits all, and every deal is going to be different because first the project is going to be different, a different maturity stage, different risk profile. If you're talking about a new target or an established target, a new technology or an established technology, the risk profile is going to be different. So the upfront is going to be different. The milestones are going to be different. The total deal value is going to be different. So there are a couple of benchmarks, obviously, that give you a flavor. And the 25 million upfront and 300 plus million total deal value that we had with Galapagos did actually earmark OETD01. So now the next partner that comes already has an idea of the price that they would be willing to pay. Is it the correct price for the program? It may be right now, but when we have positive results of the phase 2 proof of concept study, it might not be the case anymore, and the value might be higher. So already, when you're disclosing the value of your deals, you're earmarking for yourself and for everybody else what's the deal is worth.
And I would like to ask Vatnak, generally speaking, this Polish expectation of signing another partnering deals, and I would like to find out how does it respond with foreign investors' expectations. When you speak to foreign investors, what they expect from the biotech company like Ryvo? Do they want to hear about another partnering deals, or do they expect more, I don't know, keeping IP and building the market, the valuation of the company, basing on this more and more advanced IP that is inside the firm?
Yeah, thanks. I think I'll actually answer this question a little bit differently, because I think, I don't want to make generalizations about Polish investors versus foreign investors, but rather I think, in my experience, there's kind of two types of investors, or multiple types, but two general types of investors that may invest in Ryvo or other biotech companies. And so one is a generalist investor who may be investing in a company for the mission, the management team, ability to deliver, and things like that. And I think if the more generalist investors are more inclined to want kind of external validation through deals and things like that. And so I think that's a logical reason why a generalist investor might invest in a biotech company like Ryvo. We've also seen within Poland and as foreign investors, kind of funds and investors that are much more biotech savvy now and investing for the science and investing in the long term. And so I think investors like that are more patient with perhaps the ability to deliver long term on our projects. And so I think with those investors, there may be more appetite to really wait for the right deal with the right partner at the right time, really able to kind of, or really being able to patiently wait for the right type of deal, in the long term. And so I think in our experience, it's really nice to have both types of investors. I think they're investing for different reasons, and the combination of the two makes a good balance in terms of how we bring value to our shareholders.
Actually, maybe if I could just add a comment there, it's because I think it was a very relevant comment, is that in fact, in my past, I've worked extensively in the antibody field, antibody companies. And I think it's the big learning in biotech is, as was just mentioned, is that you really have to have a portfolio. You have to be able to do deals. You have to be able to get agreements signed to validate your technology, as we said, so that companies can see that what your company is offering is of value. But on the other hand, you do also have to really have a portfolio approach and keep some assets till later, because that's when because the big thing in human pharmaceuticals is it's human clinical trials, because, something like 1 out of 9 projects eventually makes it to human efficacy. So I think it's very important. And I would just like to give, investors in the room, a history that I was personally involved with, which is 2 antibody companies. One was Kymab, a UK, Cambridge, UK antibody company, and the other one is Morphosis, which is a company in Germany. Both of those have an antibody platform and started from a platform with no pipeline. Morphosis took the approach of doing partnering extensively. They did something like 30 deals. I'm sure they probably even maybe did more. But over a period of 22 years, they have, from when they started to today, they're on the market in NASDAQ, and their market cap is 1 billion, which sounds really nice, but that's after 22 years of activity. They have a market cap of 1 billion. But the actual amount of money invested in Morphosis is like 650 million. So the actual, for 22 years of work, they're making about a third upside to the project. And they have done a huge amount of partnering deals, but they don't have any high-value assets in the clinic on their own. And that's happened so many times that you have companies who just partner early all the time. They do lots and lots of deals. It helps their cash flow, but they don't build significant value. Whereas Kymab is a company which I was involved with. We did one deal at the beginning to validate our technology platform, and then the company focused on developing an asset to the clinic. They got one asset into first clinical trials with some hints of efficacy. So after 10 years, not 22 years, but after 10 years, they were acquired for 1.4 billion. But the total amount of investment in that company was 263 million. So I think there is a long-term story that companies should be aware of. But you really do have to do both. You have to do partnering to validate your technology and allow investors to understand that the company is progressing, and Captor's continuing to do that. But at the same time, you need to try and reserve some assets, at least one, if not two, assets where you can add significant value. I mean, it only takes an extra 2 or 3 years, but you add significant value, and then you get into the billions. And I think that's a learning that many Polish companies, I think, are appreciating, that a portfolio is really essential, and it's not all about doing 50 deals.
This is exactly the experience that we've had, talking to investors both in the US and in Poland or in Europe. Whereas in Poland, they say, when is the next deal? In the US is, how far can you go with your project pipelines if I give you that money?
Tom, taking an occasion, I would that you're at the mic. Let's say, I would like to ask you, what is unique in your deal-making approach in Captor?
Yeah, unique's a big word. I guess Captor, one could say that technologically we're one of a small group of companies with a targeted protein degradation platform, which is quite unique. But there are still, a number of public companies who have that technology, so we're not fully unique. However, I think what's interesting for us, and I think a big advantage for us in deal making, is that many companies, virtually all biotech companies, have a pipeline. We have a pipeline. We have a pipeline of 4 assets, some of which are almost at the clinic and some are earlier. So we have 4 assets, but that's very common. Biotech companies often have multiple assets. But in addition to the assets in our pipeline, where we have been investing millions to get those to advance, we also have our platform. And the advantage of a TP, targeted protein degradation platform, is you can apply it to almost any target in pharma. So therefore, we have the ability, which is, I think, very comfortable for us, is that we can do deals. And an example would be Ono. Our collaboration with Ono Pharmaceutical was a platform deal. In other words, we started a new project with Ono using protein degradation, which they were very interested in. And that allows us to continue to get revenue from Ono, etc., and future milestones. But it didn't touch our pipeline. Our pipeline remains intact. And we have now decided that we have two of our pipeline projects we're now going to actively license, and 2 of our projects we're going to take a bit further to get this increase in value. And I think having the platform really allows us to continue to do deals, but without damaging this question of taking some assets further. In other words, we don't have to sell everything. We can keep some things and sell our platform through these deal making. And I think that's a very nice situation to be in. So when I meet a company, I can talk about our pipeline and the MEA asset, but I can also talk about our platform and talk about any targets they want to.
Yeah, but it means that the platform itself has a value. And do you think that Polish investors include in their valuations of Captor the platform, which is basically the engine of the company?
To be honest, it's a very long, it's an outstanding question for many times. And I actually have to say that not only do not a lot of investors don't value the platform, but also a lot of pharma companies don't value the platform. Because the reality of the story I just said about Kymab, who was acquired for 1.4 billion, 90% or even more of that valuation was based on the one asset. Basically, Sanofi bought the platform for nothing, because even pharma companies look at the lead asset and say, what's the value of this lead asset? And they buy the company on that basis, and the platform is kind of not a big value. So that's why it's the benefit of having a platform is the ability to do lots of licensing deals, but without damaging your pipeline. But if someone wants to buy the company, they will probably buy it because of the lead asset, not because of the platform.
And how many employees develop projects in Captor?
Yeah. I mean, we have like over 100 people in the company, and so the vast majority of our expenditure is on our own project, because one of the things we make sure is that if we do a collaboration, for example, with Ono, it doesn't cost us anything. We don't have any costs of our own. So all of that is covered by the partner. So basically, when you look at our accounts and you see our expenditure, virtually all of that is on our own pipeline. And there's a small percentage which is to continue to develop our platform independently of collaborations.
And how many of this 100 is working on the early pipeline?
Most of that work is actually outsourced. Because our pipeline now is going towards it, so it's in GLP toxicology, it's in all of these things. So those are externally sourced. So the big advantage for us is that we have probably half of our company is working on our platform and to continue to develop that, and about 25% of the company is focused on our collaborations. But those costs are covered. And then we've got probably about 25% who really look after the outsourcing and so on. And what's interesting about the Captor model as well is that when we do have a collaboration and they pay for our FTEs, our full-time staff who are working the project, we do include also a profit margin.
So if it's proper understanding that if the market doesn't not include into the valuation the platform value, it means that it's not evaluating half of your company?
Yeah, in terms of the staff, but in terms of the costs, it's quite small, because we also do have the grant programs, the Polish grant programs. So last year, for example, if you look at our accounts for last year, something like 60% of our entire grant costs came from non-dilutive funding. And that includes both grants, but also partnerships.
Perfect. We are running out of time, so I will skip one question, and I will go to the final question of our debates at PHASE2023. The question which is probably very important for investors, as it's connected with signs which should investors look for to anticipate that something big is coming in your companies. And I would like to ask Nicholas Bausen what investors should look for that will happen before the big events to anticipate that these big events are coming.
So within the next 12 months, if we take the programs in order for OATD01, we've already received the approval from the FDA, and we are filing for the approval at the EMA for the proof of concept study. So we will be initiating the phase 2 sarcoidosis trial called KITE, both in the US and in Europe before the end of this year. With regard to DSO2, we will have reached by the end of this year the maximum tolerated dose, most likely, and the rollover study has been approved, meaning that patients who are benefiting from the effects of OATD02 will be able to continue on the treatment outside of the current phase 1 study. We will also be including patients with hematopoietic cancers, such as AML in 24, and we will start looking at combination studies with checkpoint inhibitors. With the earlier programs, we plan to nominate preclinical candidate molecules so that we will progress them, and we will continuously stage our pipeline. And but one of the important things to look for is the proof of concept for the mRNA platform, because we are moving in the direction that Captor is taking with this small molecule targeting mRNA, meaning that we will generate our own programs that we will keep inside the company and that will feed the pipeline. And at the same time, we'll provide this engine that we are working on to potential partners. So these are the upcoming milestones and catalysts to look for.
Tom?
Yeah, a couple of things. We gave some guidance a couple of months ago that with our two projects, CT02 and CT05, for those of you who follow the company, but those two inflammation projects that we expect in Q3 to have in vivo proof of concept of efficacy of those studies, which we say would be an important trigger for starting partnering discussions. And we maintain that guidance, and we expect we'll probably give an update to shareholders sometime around the end of the month on those projects. So that's as I say, we're retaining the guidance we gave before, so we expect that to continue. And we're also still maintaining our guidance that we will also be filing our application for the first clinical trial as well this year. And I think in terms of this, because obviously we've talked about partnering a lot today, so in terms of partnering at Captor, I think those two inflammation assets, CT02 and CT05, given that we are on target for our proof of concept data in vivo, we will expect to start, when we have in fact started some partner discussions on those, because that was the key trigger that we were waiting for the value trigger to get that data in the animal models for efficacy, which is going ahead as planned. So I think we're now started a lot of different discussions, and as I said, we will give an update to shareholders probably towards the end of this month on how's that going. And then the other news that's coming up will be where we're increasing our the scope of our international management team, and we're probably making some announcements on that very shortly as well. And as I said, at the end of the year, filing the clinical trial authorization. So those are the big watch-outs. And I think in general, I can say that probably either end of August or beginning of September, we'll make a summary update to shareholders, which I think will be interesting reading.
Batnak, how does it look like in the case of Rival?
Thank you. Rival takes a balanced portfolio approach, which gives us a lot of opportunity for upcoming milestones as well as diversifying our values. So if you look across our pipeline on preclinical versus clinical and partner versus wholly owned, we kind of have a balanced portfolio across that matrix. So on the partnership side, we have a clinical deal with Menarini on MEN1703, and then the preclinical deals that we signed last year that are active are with Exelixis and BioNTech. So on that side, you can expect potential milestones in the future, which we can't talk about specifically, but potential value drivers there, as well as various announcements from our partners. On the wholly owned side, we have a clinical asset in RIVO120, as well as a synthetic lethality platform with 2 disclosed programs, as well as potential other undisclosed novel targets behind that. And so on RIVO120, we've already disclosed that at ESMO, there will be a poster, and we expect to have data throughout the second half of the year and also start phase 2. On the synthetic lethality side, expect progress there, as well as, across our wholly owned pipeline. There's always potential for partnerships. We're always talking to partners, but as I mentioned before, we have the luxury now of having enough cash to advance our assets internally, and so we'll continue to look for the right partner at the right time so we can maximize deal value.
Piotr, for the last one, what should we expect in case of
from Scope Politics? So I guess 2 things to mention. One is Bacteromic. We're building the project, the value of the project, and at the same time we're beginning the sale process, which has stages to it. So what to watch for? I would say that we think very carefully about the development plan, and whatever we can share, we do share with the market in the sense of declaration or plan for the milestones. So these are to watch for. Be sure that we commit, 110% of our time to actually carefully choose these goals and to building the kind of organic value of the technology. On the sales side, things that are easy to watch for is where we present Bacteromic, where we speak, what conferences do we attend, and the thing that is accessible to the market is our notifications of signing agreements. So it actually, on the previous panel, one of you said that signing an agreement with the transaction advisory is maybe not so significant. In my experience, this is kind of a pre-sale actually event, in the sense that the advisors choose the projects that they have faith in selling. So to that extent, it might be an important milestone for the market to read. On the scope discovery side, we communicated the number of projects that we have in the pipeline. We're still debating internally if we could shed more insight into the process, the stages, but we're certainly gonna be updating about the number of projects. For sure, you're gonna learn when we're gonna launch a new project in the form of a new daughter company. For now, I can assure you that this is quite intensive work. We have the team assembled already, and it's exciting.
Thank you very much. That was the last topic in today's debate. I hope that it will be useful and valuable for investors. Thank you, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.